The restaurant glowed with a warm, amber light that softened every corner, giving the place an effortlessly elegant charm. Soft jazz drifted from overhead speakers, blending with the clinking of glasses and low hum of weekend chatter. Couples leaned close over flickering candles, friends laughed over shared plates, and waiters wove between tables with practiced grace. It was the kind of atmosphere that made everything feel slightly cinematic, perfect for a memorable night, for better or worse. Lena paused at the entrance, smoothing the front of her navy dress with slightly trembling hands. She wasn't used to evenings like this. Most nights were spent with her favorite shows, a warm blanket, and the quiet comfort of being alone. But her friend, determined that Lena get back out there, had set her up on this blind date with someone who supposedly had a great personality and open mind. Lena wasn't sure whether those were compliments or consolation prizes. Still, she wanted to believe tonight could go well. She inhaled deeply as the hostess greeted her, offering a reassuring smile before leading her inside. Lena's heels clicked softly against the polished floor, and with each step her heartbeat fluttered faster. She scanned the room, silently rehearsing what she'd say when she met him. "Hi, I'm Lena, nice to meet you." "Yes, traffic was terrible." "Yes, this place is beautiful." "No, I'm not always this nervous." But beneath the surface ran a familiar undercurrent of doubt. She tugged at the hem of her dress, wondering if it clung too much, if her makeup looked uneven, if her curves would be the first thing he noticed. She wished she didn't care so much, but tonight she really wanted to be seen, not judged. Hope and anxiety circled inside her as she approached the table reserved for two, praying this evening wouldn't remind her of every insecurity she already carried. Mark arrived with the energy of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Lena spotted him approaching the table, a tall man in a crisp button-down, good-looking in a conventional way, but with an expression that already seemed impatient. He didn't smile when he reached her. Instead, he gave a quick, perfunctory nod, as though acknowledging a coworker rather than meeting a blind date. "You're Lena?" he asked, glancing at her for half a second before his eyes dropped to the phone in his hand. "Yes," she said, offering a tentative smile. "Hi. Nice to meet you." Huh. He slid into the chair opposite her, immediately typing something into his phone. The screen's reflection lit up his face more brightly than the candle between them. Lena tried again. "Traffic okay?" "It's usually a nightmare on Saturdays." "Fine," Mark replied without looking up. Silence trickled in, awkward and thin. She clasped her hands together to keep from fidgeting. "So, our mutual friend mentioned you work in finance. That must keep you busy." "Yep." Another curt reply. Another glance at his phone. The device buzzed, and he smirked at whatever he read. Not a single follow-up question for her. Lena swallowed, internally scrambling for a foothold in the conversation. She tried shifting the topic to the restaurant, how she'd never been here before, how beautiful the place was. Mark nodded vaguely and muttered something about the menu being overpriced. Every word felt like dragging a stubborn door open. She straightened her posture, projecting interest she wasn't sure she felt anymore. Maybe he's nervous, she told herself. Maybe he just needs time to warm up. But the longer she sat there, the more the tension coiled inside her. She could feel him assessing her, not in the curious, getting-to-know-you way she'd hoped for, but in a quick, dismissive scan. His gaze kept flicking away, as if she wasn't worth the effort of a full look. Lena forced another small smile, determined not to let the evening collapse yet. She reached for a safe topic, something simple, something human, anything to pull him into the moment. But Mark's indifference hung between them like a closed door, and she could already feel the chill creeping through the cracks. Mark finally set his phone down, face up, as if he needed to keep an eye on it, and gave Lena a long, appraising look. It wasn't the type of look that made someone feel admired. It felt more like she was being measured, weighed, and found lacking. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I've got to be honest." Lena's heart tightened. Nothing good ever followed that sentence. "You look different from your photos." She blinked, caught off guard. "Oh. I mean, they're recent, so." "No," he cut her off with a small scoff. I mean different. Fuller. His eyes swept over her in a way that made her wish she could disappear into the floor. I don't remember you looking this big. The words dropped like stones between them. Lena's breath hitched. She felt heat rush up her neck, flooding across her cheeks. She tried to laugh it off, lightly, neutrally, anything to stop the humiliation from spiraling. The camera can be strange sometimes, she murmured. Angles, lighting. Yeah. Well, he interrupted again, louder this time. I have certain standards when I date. He shrugged, as if this somehow softened the cruelty. I don't do that. He gestured vaguely at her body, not even trying to hide what he meant. A few heads at nearby tables turned. Lena froze, humiliated, stunned, unable to form a response. Her mind buzzed, but her body felt numb, as though her heartbeat had paused mid-thump. She stared at the tablecloth, the candle, anywhere but his eyes. Mark sighed dramatically, as though he were the one who'd been inconvenienced. Look, I'm sure you're nice or whatever, but this isn't going to work. Next time, just be upfront. Saves everyone time. He reached for his jacket, still muttering as he stood up. People should represent themselves honestly. Standards exist for a reason. With that final jab, he walked away without a backward glance. Lena didn't move. Not for several seconds. Maybe longer. Her chest tightened painfully as the shock seeped into something sharper, hurt, shame, and a desperate wish to shrink into nothing. She stared down at her hands, willing her eyes not to well up. Don't cry. Not here. Not now. She inhaled shakily, but the burn in her throat only grew. The room around her blurred, the warm glow of the restaurant now felt harsh and unforgiving. A couple at a nearby table whispered to each other. She wasn't sure if she imagined it or not. She reached for her purse with trembling fingers. All she wanted, more than anything, was to leave before her tears finally won. At the table just a few feet away, Ethan had watched the scene unfold with a growing heaviness in his chest. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, he'd only been enjoying a rare evening out with his 8-year-old daughter, Mia, who was happily coloring the paper kids' menu with crayons. But Mark's raised voice, sharp and cutting, had made it impossible not to notice. Ethan had seen Lena's face fall, seen the way her shoulders curled inward, as though she were trying to make herself smaller. The man's words had been loud enough to carry, and every syllable had landed like a punch. Even from across the aisle, Ethan felt the sting of them. He shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. Should I say something? Intervening in a stranger's hurt wasn't always welcome, some people preferred privacy, especially in moments of embarrassment. Ethan didn't want to make things worse for her. But watching her blink rapidly, fighting tears, made his chest twist. And then Mia looked up at him. Her big brown eyes were round with confusion. Daddy, she whispered, tugging at his sleeve, why was that man so mean to the lady? Ethan exhaled. Kids always saw things simply, purely. No excuses, no social hesitation, just right and wrong. He shouldn't have talked to her like that, Ethan said softly. Mia frowned, glancing back at Lena with genuine sadness. She looks really sad. I know, he murmured. Mia leaned closer. Can we help her? Ethan hesitated for only a moment. He'd spent years teaching Mia to be kind, to stand up for people, to care even when it wasn't easy. And what kind of example would he be if he just sat here while someone sat alone, humiliated and hurting? He looked at Lena again. She had her purse in her trembling hands, preparing to bolt. Something in him settled. Okay, he said quietly. Yeah, let's see if we can help. Mia beamed, simple and sincere. Ethan rose from his seat, took a steadying breath, and walked toward the woman who looked like she wished she could vanish, hoping he could offer even a small moment of kindness to counter the cruelty she'd just endured. Ethan approached slowly, hands relaxed at his sides, careful not to startle her. Lena was bent over her purse, trying to steady her breathing, when she sensed someone nearby. She looked up, wiping at the corner of her eye quickly, as if she hoped he hadn't noticed. Hey, Ethan said gently, his voice warm but unobtrusive. Sorry to bother you. I just wanted to check if you're okay. Lena blinked, startled. Of all the responses she'd expected tonight, kindness from a stranger was not one of them. Oh. Yes. I'm fine. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Ethan gave a small, understanding smile. You don't have to say that. What that guy said, it wasn't okay. And it definitely wasn't about you. Her throat tightened again, but for a different reason this time. She searched his face for mockery, for pity, but found neither, just sincerity. It's really fine, she murmured, avoiding his eyes. I just want to leave before I make a scene. You didn't make a scene, Ethan said softly. He did. Before Lena could respond, a small figure appeared beside Ethan. Mia peeked around his leg, clutching a half-finished crayon drawing. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, holding out the paper with two hands. I made this, she said earnestly. It's for you. Lena stared at the drawing, two smiling stick figures under a rainbow. It wasn't fancy, but something about the pure kindness behind it made her chest ache. For me, she whispered. Mia nodded. You looked sad. Daddy says when people are sad, sometimes pictures help. Lena let out a choked laugh, feeling the tightness in her chest loosen. Thank you, sweetheart. It's beautiful. Mia grinned proudly and slipped her hand back into her father's. Ethan watched the exchange quietly before speaking again. I know this is probably the last thing you want after all that, he said, gesturing toward the empty chair Mark had abandoned. But my daughter and I are just over there. If you'd like some company, just for a few minutes, or however long you want, you're welcome to join us. Lena hesitated. Part of her wanted to run straight home and bury herself under a blanket. But another part, small, shaky, but undeniably there, wanted to feel something other than humiliation tonight. You don't have to, Ethan added quickly, raising his hand slightly. No pressure at all. We just thought, you shouldn't have to sit here alone after that. Something in his tone, gentle and unassuming, softened her completely. Lena swallowed. I think I'd like that. Ethan's smile was quiet, warm. Then come on. Mia saved you a seat. Lena followed Ethan back to his table, the drawing still clutched carefully in her hand. Mia had already scooted over to make space, patting the empty chair with enthusiastic insistence. The gesture alone made something warm flicker inside Lena, something she hadn't felt at all during her disastrous date. Sit with us. Mia said brightly. Daddy said we can order dessert soon. They have cheesecake. Lena laughed softly as she took her seat. Cheesecake is my weakness. Mine too, Ethan said, settling across from her. Though Mia here thinks ice cream should be served with every meal. Because it should, Mia declared confidently, and both adults chuckled. For the first few minutes, the silence between them wasn't awkward, just gently tentative. A server came by to refill their waters, and soon enough, conversation began to flow like it had been waiting for the right moment. So, Ethan said, leaning his forearms on the table, I'm glad you decided to join us. It's not every day we get to have dinner with someone who appreciates the sacredness of cheesecake. Lena smiled, a real one this time. Well, I couldn't pass up that kind of invitation. He grinned. I should warn you, Mia and I come as a package deal. Mia nodded seriously. We're a team. Lena softened. That's kind of wonderful. Ethan explained how he'd been a single father for the last 3 years, how chaotic, exhausting, and unexpectedly joyful it could be. Lena found herself leaning in, genuinely interested. She told them about her job at the library, how much she loved recommending books, and how she had a small garden on her windowsill that she swore had a personality. You name your plants? Ethan asked, amused. Of course, Lena said with playful indignation. They deserve identities. Mia gasped. Can you name mine? I keep forgetting to water them. Honesty, Ethan muttered with a laugh, ruffling her hair. As they talked, the earlier heaviness in Lena's chest slowly melted away. There were no sharp judgments here, no sidelong glances, no quiet assessments of her body. Ethan asked about her interests, not out of obligation, but curiosity. He laughed at her jokes, shared his own stories, and listened with the kind of attention she wasn't used to receiving. Little by little, Lena felt her confidence inch back, like a shy creature testing the air. And for the first time that evening, she didn't feel scrutinized. She felt seen. As the evening unfolded, Lena found herself easing into the warmth at the table, almost forgetting how her night had begun. Each moment with Ethan and Mia felt like stitching together pieces of herself she hadn't realized had torn loose. The shift was subtle at first, a lighter breath, a steadier heartbeat, but the more she sat with them, the more she felt something deeper settling inside her. Maybe the problem wasn't me, she thought quietly. She replayed Mark's cold words in her mind, but they no longer hit with the same brutal force. Instead, they sounded hollow compared to the soft, genuine kindness she was experiencing now. Ethan hadn't looked at her with judgment. Mia hadn't even noticed anything except that she seemed sad. Their gentleness had created a buffer around her that Mark's cruelty couldn't fully penetrate. For so long, Lena had allowed that familiar internal voice, the one whispering she wasn't enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't thin enough, to speak louder than any compliment she'd ever received. It had followed her into changing rooms, into first dates, into mirrored moments alone at home. Tonight, Mark's words threatened to amplify it, but then Ethan spoke to her like she deserved respect. Mia offered her a drawing without hesitation or conditions. And suddenly, that inner critic didn't feel so powerful. Lena looked across the table at Ethan as he teased Mia about extra whipped cream. His smile was easy, unforced, and not once had his eyes flicked over her body with the cold inventory Mark had used. He listened. He laughed. He made space for her without making her feel like she was imposing. A warmth bloomed in her chest, appreciation first, then something quieter but sturdier, hope. She traced her fingers over the crayon drawing Mia had given her. 2 stick figures and a rainbow. Simple. Pure. A child's world where kindness didn't need justification. Mia caught her looking and grinned. You can keep it forever if you want. Lena smiled, soft and sincere. I think I will. For the first time in a long while, the weight she carried felt lighter, not because anything dramatic had changed, but because someone had shown her she deserved better than what she'd been taught to expect. And that realization was the beginning of something new inside her. When the bill was settled and Mia was happily finishing the last smear of cheesecake on her plate, the 3 of them rose to leave. The restaurant had quieted, the soft jazz now a gentle hum beneath the clatter of closing shifts. Lena gathered her things, surprised to feel a small pang of disappointment that the evening was ending. Just an hour earlier she had been desperate to flee, but now, she felt steadier. Warmer. Ethan walked beside her toward the exit while Mia skipped a few steps ahead, humming to herself. The cool night air greeted them at the door, carrying the faint scent of nearby bakeries closing for the night. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets and glanced at her with a mixture of bashfulness and quiet resolve. I'm really glad you joined us, he said. I hope it made the night a little better. It did, Lena replied honestly. More than you know. He nodded, looking relieved. Then he hesitated, just briefly, before speaking again. I don't want to overstep. But if you'd ever like to meet again, coffee, a walk, anything, I'd really enjoy that. His voice held no expectation, only sincerity. No pressure at all. Lena felt her breath catch. For a moment, the old reflex to doubt herself stirred, telling her he couldn't mean it. But she remembered the way he'd listened. The way Mia had accepted her without question. The way her laughter had felt real for the first time all evening. She met his gaze and found nothing but openness there. I'd like that, she said softly. Ethan's answering smile was quiet but unmistakably pleased. They exchanged phones and tapped in their numbers, each saving the other with a small, hopeful smile. Mia waved enthusiastically. Bye, Lena. Don't lose the picture. I won't, Lena said, holding it close. As they parted ways on the sidewalk, Lena realized the night that had nearly broken her had instead surprised her, with kindness, courage, and the possibility of something new. A bad night had become something else entirely. A beginning. Sometimes, life doesn't go as planned. Lena had walked into the restaurant expecting a simple blind date, only to be met with cruelty and judgment. In that moment, it would have been easy to retreat, to let someone else's narrow perception define her worth. But life has a way of balancing its scales in unexpected ways. The kindness of strangers, Ethan's gentle presence, Mia's innocent compassion, reminded her that genuine connection isn't about appearances or adhering to arbitrary standards. It's about empathy, attention, and the courage to offer warmth when it's needed most. Lena learned that self-worth isn't granted by others, it's nurtured by those who see us for who we truly are, and by our own willingness to accept it. What began as a painful rejection ended as a moment of unexpected hope. Sometimes, the universe replaces something harsh with something far better, understanding, acceptance, and a new beginning.